Part 18. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 171. Chapter 171. She is not just gentle. There was no other emotion in Tang Wan's eyes. She looked at Go 11 with pure concern for her. There are no false expressions, nor any added value. Tang Wan is always so straightforward. It is precisely because of Tang Wan's straightforwardness that Go 11 feels at ease. She blinked her eyes, looked at herself in Tang Wan's eyes, and spoke. Does Tang Tang think I'm useless? Just like those words you heard in the cafeteria, you will also feel that you are a rude girl and not a good boy? However, Tang Wan stretched out his hand, imitating the way those people comforted him, holding Go 11 in his arms, and gently brushed his hand through Go 11's hair. Gentle and tolerant. Go 11 was in a daze. Speaking of which, there are no such delicate emotions in her family. Her mother is an armed police officer and is away from home for many years. Her father is a suspense novelist and spends a long time in front of the computer every day. The time to really accompany Go 11 is very little. Go 11 and her father were most familiar with each other when they were on variety shows. That was the longest time they spent together. Thinking of this, Go 11 couldn't help but bury her face on Tang Wan's shoulder. Somewhat aggrieved. She doesn't want to be alone anymore. As if thinking of something, Tang Wan let go of Go 11's hand, then stood up, stood on tiptoes, stretched out his hand and opened the top of the tent. When you unzip the invisible zipper above, you can see the sky full of stars. The bright moonlight hangs in the sky, like a quiet river, quietly washing people's souls. In the bustling city, the stars in the sky were originally invisible. The strange thing is that there are stars in the sky today. Those bright stars are like lights in the dark night, lighting up the world. Tang Wan took out a child's watch and took a picture of the starry sky. Then he handed it to Go 11 to see. He said anxiously, "Ah, ah." Then he picked up the tablet and wrote on it. We are all stars. Every star is good. Go 11 pursed her lips and said in a low voice, but there are so many stars, who would care about one inconspicuous star among them? Unexpectedly, Tang Wan pointed to the stars in the photo with a look of disapproval, and then wrote on the tablet. This star cares, this star also cares. Then he pointed at himself. I also care. Go 11 opened her mouth and felt her eyes were a little sore. She is not a mad child. On the contrary, because she grew up without her parents for a long time, Go 11 is actually more sensitive than other children of the same age. She was just used to putting on a careless smile to show respect and cover her uneasiness. She was actually afraid that Tang Wan would see her in such a cowardly state and feel that she had been deceived. However, Tang Wan did not. She treated herself as normal. Suddenly, Go 11 watched Tang Wan write on the tablet. There are no inconspicuous stars. The star next to that star will feel that the star around it is the brightest and the best star in the entire universe. Go 11's eyes were red. She hugged Tang Wan and opened her mouth. She felt her heart swelled, feeling a little sour but also a little relieved. That star also feels that the star next to it is the best and brightest star in the world. Go 11's voice was choked with sobs. She sniffed and hugged Tang Wan tightly, like a drowning person hugging the only life-saving straw. The star lamp lit up behind Tang Wan, as if she was covered with a layer of soft light, so gentle that it was unbelievable. But Go 11 knows. This friend of mine is more than just gentle. She also has a tenacity. She is like a tree growing out of the cracks in the rocks, tenacious yet gentle. It is a kind of power that transcends everything. Tang Tang is not like herself. She only has strength disguised on the outside. She is strong from the inside out. Tang Wan saw that Go 11 kept looking at him, so he stretched out his hand to cover Go 11's eyes and whispered twice. It seems to be saying, it's time to sleep. Tang Wan knew why Go 11 was clinging to him. Probably because those words affected her. Tang Wan was thinking as he helped Go 11 squeeze the quilt. Then slowly close your eyes. So what if I heard it? As long as Zixi has no bad intentions, she will be friends with Zixi for life. When she is uneasy, I just need to be by her side. Go 11 also slept here in Tangwan for the remaining few days, just like Tangwan's little pendant, just not going anywhere. Even Ji Helen, who was in the tent next to Tangwan, had no chance to approach Tangwan. Ji Helen was about to come to Tangwan's side several times, but Go 11 drove him away again. Tangwan, who has always had a strong sense of the boundaries of others, didn't say anything and just followed Go 11's wishes. Soon, the spring flower party will be over. Different from previous flower fairs, this flower fair invested hundreds of thousands into the fund. It's all due to the first grade, A, class. For this reason, the principal also specially praised these little boys at the weekly meeting. The school is not short of money, and neither are these students. What they lack is a sense of responsibility and empathy. The principal looked at the small figure in Class A and felt that she seemed to be a variable in this school. At the same time, the school club will also start recruiting new students. There are some differences from the clubs in the upper grades. There are only a few clubs in the primary school, not too many. The most popular one is the music club. At the same time, this is also the most ordinary society. After all, none of these children have learned one or two musical instruments since they were young. Suddenly, the students in class A turned their attention to Tangwan. Oh, no. This transfer student has never studied. These societies are all unfamiliar to Tangwan. The orphanage does not have these things. Music, equestrian, hockey. Some people have never heard of Tangwan. But her posture was upright and she did not look anxious at all. Instead, he looked at the club registration form more calmly than anyone else, looking confident. You should know that these societies need to be assessed. It would be very embarrassing if you were at the bottom every time. Suddenly, they saw Tangwan standing up. Which club should she choose? The kids' eyes followed Tangwan's movements, and finally they saw Tangwan stopping in front of the martial arts club. She is so brave. This thought flashed through the minds of all the little boys present. You must know that the martial arts club involves a lot of punches and kicks, and there are a lot of stumblings on weekdays. Except for children like Go 11, most people would not choose a martial arts club. Even the head teacher was a little surprised. He looked at the registration form handed over by Tangwan and asked again, "Are you sure you want to join the martial arts club?" Tangwan nodded affirmatively. She can't be too weak. In the life she planned for herself, she could not have only one head. She needs to have a healthy body. In this way, people who destroy their own homes can be punished. Bring him to justice. If it weren't for the collection that is still moving, I would have thought that I had entered a black hole in the world. Damn it, please talk to me. I'm so panicked when there's no feedback. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 172. Chapter 172 The Desperate Revenge. With this thought in mind, Tangwan chose the martial arts club without much hesitation. Although Tangwan did not tell others what she was thinking, she never forgot her obsession. She knew clearly that what she remembered in her heart was not hatred, but a kind of truth obtained from mother's mouth. It is inheritance. It is the courage to sacrifice everything for this wonderful country and the determination never to retreat. She naturally heard the whispers behind her, but Tangwan didn't pay attention to them. No one would have thought that such a young child would already have things in mind for adulthood. In their minds, Tangwan should be fascinated by the colorful world in front of them. Tangwan looked at his club form, turned around and looked at the blooming spring flowers in the flower bed outside the window, and slowly lowered his eyelids. Flowers will bloom again, and people will never be young again. Tang Wan has long been ready to join in the unfinished business of her parents, and she is always prepared for this. Never miss an opportunity. The days passed like this day by day. It's just that Tang Wan suddenly felt that he hadn't heard from Lu Lin for a long time. Lu Lin is actually not a talkative person. In many cases, the messages he sends to Tang Wan are concise and to the point. But there has never been so many days without news. The rest of the Lu family were already familiar with Lu Lin not replying to messages for 10 days and a half, so they didn't take it to heart. Only Tang Wan felt some strange feelings in his heart. She always felt that Lu Lin was not a person who suddenly stopped talking. Lu Ziyi held a small stool and sat next to Tang Wan, wanting to see if Tang Wan had any knowledge. As an older brother who is 2 grades higher than Tang Wan, I give lectures to Tang Wan. However, he saw that Tang Wan had been stroking his children's watch, with a strange expression on his face. As if he was stuck in some kind of problem. Lu Ziyi thought about it and felt that the only one who could make Tang Wan pay attention to the watch information was his uncle, so he said, Tang, are you worried about your uncle? He should be back soon. 3 months of filming, now more than 2 months have passed. More than 2 months. Tang Wan raised his eyebrows slightly. But Lu Lin clearly said that he would come back when he was free. Last time he came back to accompany me. Tang Wan frowned slightly when he thought of this. The uneasiness in my heart became more and more obvious. She turned her head, turned on the computer, and entered a string of codes on it. Looking at Sujiajia's positioning system that appeared last time, he also looked at Lu Lin's last online IP address, and then opened the map. The 2 places are very close to each other. It's so close, only a short 2 hours by water. Waterway. Tang Wan vaguely caught some trivial clues. But these clues cannot be connected. About the explosion of Chris's cruise ship last time, as well as the activation of Sujiajia's positioning system, and the inexplicable lack of news from Lu Lin, they all seem to be conveying a message to Tang Wan. That is, they are urging Tang Wan to appear. The reason why Lu Lin did not reply to him immediately was probably because he realized that the person who went to find him this time was probably someone related to him. Or should I say, it's related to the person who killed his mother. Thinking of this, Tang Wan's fingers curled up slightly. The knuckles are pale. So, when did Lu Lin lose his voice? 3 days ago? Or 1 day ago? Lu Ziyi saw Tang Wan's expression becoming more and more serious, and he slowly sat up straight, and asked with some worry, Tang? Are you worried about your uncle? He'll be fine, it's just a photo shoot. However, Tang Wan didn't listen to what he said and rushed out the door and left the Lu family's old house. Lu Ziyi couldn't catch up with Tang Wan, so he could only watch her run away like a gust of wind. He stood behind Tang Wan, scratching his head helplessly, his tone full of confusion. What is Tang so upset about? It's so strange. Lu Ziyi thought about it and felt that Tang Wan's strange behavior could not be hidden from his elders, so he told the family group about it. Grandpa Lu, who had not spoken in the group for a long time, suddenly came online and replied. Zai old man, just stay at home and don't go anywhere. Lu Ziyi looked at his grandfather's words and finally realized that he had really missed some information. The younger uncle may really be in danger. Ziyi, Grandpa, is my uncle safe now? Tang was very anxious. However, the family group suddenly became quiet, and no one responded to the message again. Lu Ziyi pursed his lips and returned to the bedroom reluctantly. He can't do much to help, he can only protect himself and make everyone feel at ease. On the other side, Tang Wan went directly to ask the driver to take him to the Si family villa. The driver in front of him was a little thin, and he was different from the bodyguards Tang Wan usually saw. The hand stretched out from the sleeve of the suit is a little dark. There is a scar on the tiger's mouth, like a wound made by a sharp weapon, with stitching marks on it. Wearing a black hat on his head, a few strands of hair that were not hidden were exposed from under the brim. Tang Wan glanced at him, put the palm-sized tablet beside him, and got into the car. When the car left the Lu family's old house and drove further away, the driver suddenly said, "How brave are you to go to such a far place alone?" Tang Wan is very familiar with this accent. In the first 5 years before she met Lu Lin, she had been living with this accent. Is the accent of Huainan. Her fingers slowly tightened, and the smile on her face disappeared long ago, but there was no look of fear on her face. On the contrary, she was a little dazed, just like she used to look like in the orphanage. Is the look that those people are most familiar with. It's really not easy to catch you alone. We have put in a lot of hard work, but it's all gone because of you, a little brat. MMP, there are so many of our brothers, they were all arrested because of you. You little mute, you should have died in that fire. At this point, his voice became a little sinister, and Tang Wan saw his face through the rear-view mirror. A scar running through his left eye made him look a little ferocious. Labor and management are going to throw you into the sea to feed the sharks. Avenge your brothers who died in labor. He accelerated suddenly, and the car rushed out like an arrow off the string. As the silver-gray McLaren shuttled around on the busy street, Tang Guan heard the sound of horns blaring all around, along with sounds that seemed to include some curses coming from the side. The smile on the face of the desperado in front of him became more and more wild, as if he was dancing with the of death. Tang Wan stretched out his left hand and pinched his right hand hard, forcing himself to calm down. She knew that adrenaline hormones put the person in front of her in a state of life-threatening excitement. I also knew that when I got in this car, all electronic devices had been blocked. But drip, drip, drip. A strange sound came from Tang Wan's body, disturbing the thugs who were driving. His voice was irritable, and he yelled at Tang Wan without looking back. What a sound! Close it to labor and management. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 173. Chapter 173. Lu Lin is back. The various sounds made the already tense nerves of the thug in front of him tremble. The sound of Diddy, the sound of trumpets around him, the endless flow of people, and the sounds of those creatures suddenly broke the string that kept him calm. He slapped the steering wheel angrily and cursed, "MD. Get out of the way. Roll, roll, roll. If you don't get out of the way, labor and capital will kill you all." Tang Wan noticed that there was sweat on his face all the time, and it fell on his chin drop by drop, forming a drop of water and falling from it. It seemed to make a sound. The sound of ba was like the last straw that broke the camel's back, causing him to step on the brakes. The tires made a screeching sound as they rubbed against the ground. Tang Wan unconsciously leaned forward and was thrown out of the seat, hitting the back of the driver's seat with a dull sound. The fierce man opened the car door and pulled out the thin Tang Wan. Tang Wan's peripheral vision scanned the scene in front of him. This is probably a dock. The surroundings are very quiet, there is no one at this time, and it is very remote. There is only one small boat, which seems to have been placed here specially by a man. The man's voice was a little hoarse, with a hint of desperate madness. Hand over the things, the labor and management want to see what is making the noise. Tang Wan's big eyes seemed to be filled with tears, looking a little pitiful. This appearance made the man snort coldly, his tone was still as bad, and his voice was loud, like an amplified speaker. "Now I know I'm afraid, you little didn't just show off when you tricked us. Labor and management tell you one last time, Hand over your things, otherwise labor and management will beat you to death right now. Tang Wan shook his body, slowly turned his head, and his eyes fell on the car. The man followed Tang Wan's line of sight and looked into the car, then grabbed Tang Wan's collar and walked in. Where? His condition seemed very abnormal and a little suspicious. Did you hide it? Tell me quickly what it is. Tang Wan had tears in her eyes and kept shaking her head. Hands were waving constantly, pointing to his mouth. She is mute. She can't speak. The man looked at Tang Wan's actions and suddenly calmed down. The furious look just now seemed to be all his disguise. He picked up Tang Wan as if he were carrying a little chicken. He said word for word, "Little bastard, you are cheating labor. Labor and management are going to kill you." However, the beeping sound was still ringing, which annoyed the man. Finally he let go of Tang Wan's hand and said, "Just wait." Then he turned around and crawled into the car, trying to find the thing that made the noise. Because the diddy-dip sound is too familiar to men. That sound was like a bomb countdown. He wanted to kill Tang Wan, but he didn't want to die too. He still wants to live. Tang Wan, looking at his back, slowly pressed a button on his watch. Where? The man became irritable again. Looking at Tang Wan who was crying behind him, he suddenly realized, labor and management don't have to be afraid. Anyway, labor and management will leave here by boat. Labor, take this little brat away with you, labor. Suddenly his expression changed. When he saw the armored vehicle chasing him, he grabbed Tang Wan and ran towards the boat. But a group of people also came from behind him. They held guns in their hands and wore body armor, tightening the circle step by step. There was a beeping sound behind Tang Wan. The man grabbed Tang Wan's neck and took her as a hostage. Hand holding a dagger in his hand, he accidentally cut Tang Wan's skin open, and blood flowed slowly along the tip of the knife. A little cold. Tang Wan thought, not too scared. Her tears didn't know when they started and stopped falling. Don't come over, otherwise the labor and management will kill her. There is a bomb behind labor and capital. If you don't let labor and capital go, we will all perish together. As if to prove that what he said was true, the diddy-da sound suddenly became louder. However, those in police uniforms gradually approached the men. The knife in the man's hand was close to Tang Wan again, and the wound became deeper. Finally, they stopped 5 steps away. Suddenly, Tang Wan bit his wrist. The man's hand shook and he screamed, "Ah!" Tang Wan, who was caught in the air by the man, put his foot on the man's abdomen, then hid in the car behind him and quickly closed the door. The police, who were waiting for the opportunity, subdued the man and the situation turned around instantly. The man kicked the car door violently and continued to speak obscene words. "Little bastard, you are valuable now, someone will come to save you in such a short time. MD, I'll blow you all up later. Grass, a plant, release Nima's bomb." His mouth was quickly gagged. Tang Wan opened the car door, took out the tablet he had hidden, and then tapped the screen in front of the man. Beep, beep, boom. A green frog jumped around on the screen, its split mouth seeming to laugh at the man's constant panic. This is a small program that Tang Wan made before. It simulates many kinds of sounds and wants to make map prompt sounds. I didn't expect it to be used here. Looking at the man's face that was gradually turning pale, Tang Wan wrote on the tablet. Although these cars have self-destruct devices, they generally require the owner of the car to press a button. Also, you were caught speeding in a busy city and were caught by so many surveillance cameras. Do you really think you can escape? With the last sentence, Tang Wan looked a little surprised. This is the country of China. Her expression seemed to say that the man in front of her was mentally retarded. Made the man even angrier. What followed was a kind of fear. However, Tang Wan continued to write a sentence, but this time, The sentence was not directed at the man, but at the policeman. His mood is wrong and he is impulsive and irritable. I suspect that he has consumed contraband. There is nothing more heart-wrenching than killing someone. After the man was dragged away, Tang Wan felt pain all over his body, especially the neck. She was about to get into the police car and let the police officer simply bandage her wounds, when she saw a figure walking out of the house next to the pier, and she froze on the spot. The figure gradually approached Tang Wan, and the person's face was as dark as the bottom of a pot. It was Lu Lin, whom I had not seen for a long time. He frowned fiercely, walked to Tang Wan, squatted down slowly, took out gauze and wrapped it around Tang Wan's neck. Then he said angrily, "You turned a deaf ear to what I said again. I'll settle the score with you when I get back." After saying that, he kicked the man just now. The man rolled around on the ground in pain. But he dared not speak out. For nothing else, the look in the Lu family's eyes almost killed him. "Thanks Jinzuan Zis Habayazai for the reward, be generous. Thanks to Xiao Dan Dan Bayazai for your monthly ticket, I love you so much." The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 174. Chapter 174. Their background is arrogance. Tang noticed Lu Lin's expression and carefully stretched out his hand to tug at the corner of Lu Lin's clothes. The eyes that had been crying just now looked watery and pitiful when they raised their heads. Especially because Tang Wan still had some dragging scars on his body, he looked even more pitiful. Of course, Tang Wan didn't feel very pitiful, but subconsciously wanted to hold Lu Lin, not wanting him to be angry. Lu Lin sighed, knelt down and hugged Tang Wan. At this moment, he realized that little Tang Wan was now cold all over, even trembling unconsciously. The scarred hands were trembling slightly, as if only the palm-sized face had lost all color. Lu Lin reached out and touched Tang Wan's back. His clothes were soaked through. He was angry and distressed. He stretched out his hand to protect the back of Tang Wan's head and said, "Now you know you are afraid? Like a little quail." Tang Wan heard Lu Lin's voice, stretched out his arms and hugged Lu Lin's neck, and rubbed his face gently. Like a kitten knowing that it has done something wrong, it is rubbing its head against the people close to it, hoping to be forgiven. As everyone knows, even if the kitten does nothing, people who love kittens will never stop loving her. Tang Wan, who put his head next to Lu Lin's neck, looked at the man being pushed away, took a deep breath, and wanted to slow down his heartbeat. This is not the first time Tang Wan has calculated steps, but it is the most dangerous one. Tang Wan saw the IP address of Lu Lin's last message in the room, which was very close to the place where Sujiajia's IP address disappeared. Judging from the map, that sea area is extremely close to the border with China. If Sujiajia is abroad, he will probably be smuggled out. As long as Lu Lin enters the border, he will be safe. Jingjiao's geographical location is at the ocean boundary. Lu Lin must pass through the dock if he wants to come back. But there are too many docks in Jingjiao, and there is no way to determine which one Lu Lin will choose. It doesn't matter, Tang Wan sent a message to his father before leaving the room. All docks must be inspected and guarded. Ensure Lu Lin's safety as soon as possible. Tang Wan thought that the group of people behind Sujiajia dared to take action because there were many people behind them and enough money to support their action. That's why he acts so unscrupulously and boldly. In their opinion, their greatest support is Lu Lin. During the time when Lu Lin disappears, there is a high probability that they will take action against him. But if they want to kidnap themselves away, they will need a very good time. Tang Wan was always inseparable from Lu Ziyi and Go 11, and there were many bodyguards around him, so they didn't find a good opportunity to take action. Tang Wan took the initiative to give them a chance. She had an anxious and panicked look on her face, knowing that someone was watching her in the darkness. She performed it for them. Those eyes were all too familiar to her. Before I came out of the orphanage, I was always being watched. Just as Tangwan speculates on their actions through their sight, they will also observe Tangwan's behavior through these eyes. In countless dark nights, Tangwan deduced in his mind countless times in dark rooms, basements, and dirty cages, what kind of eyes would there be in the darkness? They should be arrogant, so they close the outside world to themselves, let themselves see all the mess and filth in that small world, and want to give up living. They did not do it themselves and regarded themselves as a miserable caged bird. Perhaps in their eyes, controlling their own sanity was more interesting than letting themselves die in an instant. Perhaps in their eyes, killing themselves or any other human life is insignificant and not worth mentioning. That's why I am so contemptuous. Tangwan is glad that their contempt has allowed him to survive a desperate situation, but he does not agree with their contempt for life. Having no respect for life is a breakdown of order. She has been waiting for an opportunity. Finally, today, she saw what she looked like behind the prying eyes. The exploding cruise ship shows that their power on the high seas is strong enough. Tangwan didn't know whether Toulouse knew the identities of those people, but judging from Toulouse's crazy acquisitions of foreign companies during this period, he was really angry. Sujiajia's actions also proved that the orphanage and the Huainan border were under the nose of those people. However, in recent years, domestic jurisdiction has become more and more strict, so my hands are tied and I was not able to catch myself as soon as I discovered that I was abnormal. Tangwan knew that even if their action failed this time, they would not change their arrogant personality. After all, if they really valued their abilities, they would not let a sinister gentleman come to arrest them. Lulin held Tangwan in his arms and asked the doctor to treat the injury on Tangwan's neck. Looking at Tangwan, who only had a pale face and normal eyes, he stretched out his hand and poked her between the eyebrows. The movement this time was a bit heavy, making Tangwan's eyebrows turn red. "What do you want me to say? You are only 6 years old this year, not 16, let alone 26. You can rely on the adults. Tang Tang, rely on us." The doctor was not familiar with Tangwan, so naturally he would not have thought that such a dangerous moment was caused by this little brat. Just looking at the young master of the Lu family who never paid attention to anyone, he looked a little surprised with such an expression. Can such a young child really understand the danger of this matter? So he opened his mouth to defend Tangwan. Miss Tangwan probably doesn't want to either. This is an accident. Who knew those traffickers would still be determined to take revenge on the children? You really do a lot of evil. At this point, the doctor became filled with indignation. It is inhumane to attack such a young child. Tangwan heard the doctor's words and blinked, looking a little innocent. Lulin was interrupted and calmed down his emotions, touched Tangwan's head, grabbed Tangwan's wrist, and set several commands on her children's watch. Probably this is a program that will alarm Tangwan if his heartbeat is too fast. Lest Tangwan use himself as bait again and throw himself into it. After finishing these things, Lulin stood up, pinched Tangwan's soft face, and pressed the quilt on her. Looking at the cute little kid buried completely under the quilt, who would have thought that she could use everyone around her to lead crazy people into her carefully laid trap step by step. Lulin's voice sounded a little tired. He had not slept for more than 40 hours since he returned from overseas. He looked at the well-behaved Tangwan, and his hanging heart finally felt like it was really falling. He said in a hoarse voice, "I'll go over to Sci-fi's place to go over these things. I'll bring you orange cake later. You have a good rest. Stop using your brain." Tangwan looked at the furious Lulin and turned his head with a guilty conscience. Then he was pinched in the face by Lulin. Did you hear that? End of this chapter. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 175. Chapter 175. Tang Tang, can you take me with you next time? Tangwan could not speak, so he could only nod his head. With her well-behaved appearance, it's hard to tell that she could do such crazy things. Who can see Tangwan without saying well-behaved baby? Only those who can keep up with Tangwan's thinking know how crazy Tangwan is. She arranged everything rationally and had a sweet smile on her face. Protect everyone well, use airtight walls to protect the people and things you care about, and then go into danger yourself. She can be protective or sane and crazy. Lulin sometimes couldn't even tell whether Tangwan wanted to protect everyone, or if he simply liked challenges and dangers. Lulin knew that Tangwan definitely didn't think so much. She is a pure and straightforward child, with an almost instinctive desire to protect everyone. She was well taught by her mother, having an innocent kindness towards all living things. It's just that she didn't learn how to protect herself. The kindness of self-sacrifice burned Tangwan's life. Tangwan saw Lulin's eyes looking a little sad and suddenly stopped his movements. Lulin stood up silently, with his back to Tangwan, looking unusually lonely. Tangwan suddenly panicked. Strange, why does Lulin have such an expression? Have you made Lulin sad? However, Lulin just closed the door gently and finally said, just take a nap, it will be fine after a nap. Tangwan could not make any sound, but he stretched out his hand in a panic to grab Lulin. However, the closed door isolated her movements and her panic expression. Tangwan looked at Lulin's back and squeezed out a sound from his throat. Ah! The wound on her neck hurt, but she seemed not to feel it. She wanted to pull out the needle on her hand, and then went to Lulin's side. Stumbled and fell off the bed, trying to run forward. At this moment, the door suddenly opened. Fu Wenzi stood in front of Tangwan with his back to the sun, slightly stunned. Looking at Tangwan, who was rarely out of control, he quickly stepped forward and picked Tangwan up from the ground. Tangwan, however, ignored Fu Wenzi's actions and just stretched out his hand in the direction Lulin left. He made a hoarse voice, like sandpaper, which tortured people's ears. Ah! Fu Wenzi pushed Tangwan back to the hospital bed and checked whether the needle in her hand was flowing back. Fortunately not. After checking, Fu Wenzi put Tangwan's hand on the quilt, looked at Tangwan, who looked pale, and said, "He's not angry, why did you rush out? Wouldn't he be even more sad when he gets hurt?" Fu Wenzi's voice still sounded boyish, but when he said this, his mood was not quite right. Like Lulin, the mood is not right. Tangwan's perception is very sharp, and Fu Wenzi and Lulin can't deceive her at all. It's a pity that her hands were fixed by Fu Wenzi, so not only could she not write, she couldn't even sign. You could only hear Fu Wenzi saying next to him, "You should bring some weapons." Tangwan's unfocused gaze fell on Fu Wenzi. "I heard him talking to himself. I saw that knife, it's a bit small for an adult, but it's relatively big for you and very dangerous. Aren't you afraid that he will bring other things with him? Aren't you afraid that he has a gun?" Suddenly, a cold hand pressed on the back of Fu Wenzi's hand. Fu Wenzi's voice disappeared immediately. He turned his head and looked at Tangwan, who had sat up from the hospital bed at some point. He opened his mouth and said the last sentence, "How long have you been in the martial arts club? Why do you just want to face it yourself?" Fu Wenzi did not say the last sentence. He knew that he would not get an answer if he said it. Tangwan is such a person. No one can change what she decides. However, Tangwan slowly raised his hand and signed in sign language at an unprecedentedly slow speed. "Worried you? Feel sorry?" Fu Wenzi's voice suddenly got stuck in his throat and he couldn't say a word. Finally, he slowly turned his head, his voice a little hoarse and a little childish, "I thought we were friends." Tangwan tilted his head and looked at Fu Wenzi with some confusion. "You can also tell me about this. But isn't that too dangerous?" Tangwan slowly frowned, somewhat disapproving. But soon, Fu Wenzi's eyes fell on Tangwan again. "You also think it's too dangerous, right?" Tang Wan's gestures of sign language suddenly stopped. Look, as long as you put yourself in my shoes, you will know that we will be worried. Fu Wenzi actually rarely said such gentle words. He has always been quite cold-blooded. Let alone putting himself in someone else's shoes, when he meets those who are looking for death, he usually speeds up his pace and leaves the fool alone. Tang Guan is different. Fu Wenzi rarely takes the initiative to be curious about something, or wants to take the initiative to approach someone. He was attracted by Tang Wan's self-sacrifice of kindness, and was moved by her indifference in treating everyone equally. Until now, Tang Wan had a concrete image in his heart. She is different from everyone else. It is a look with strong colors. Then he saw Tang Wan raising his pale hand and gesturing in sign language. But someone has to do it. Tang Wan remembers her mother's letters. It says, "There is always someone to guard this world, to protect peace, to punish bad guys, and to protect citizens. They are all children who are loved by their parents, and of course I am too. The front lines are dangerous, but someone has to go. Then why can't it be me? Then why can't it be me?" She inherited her mother's will and wanted to fulfill her mother's wishes. Fu Wenzi knew Tang Wan's determination. He looked into Tang Wan's eyes and reflected a complete version of himself. Fu Wenzi stretched out his hand and slowly covered his eyes. He was a little afraid to look at those pure eyes. By chance, Lu Ziyi and Go 11 rushed in from outside and came to Tang Wan's hospital bed, dispelling the strange atmosphere between Tang Wan and Fu Wenzi. Tang, you are too brave. How can you go with a bad person when you meet him? You should turn around and find an adult. Forget it, let's not talk about it anymore. I brought you a lot of food. After eating, there are school test papers. I also brought them back to you. If you want to write, just write. If you don't want to, just leave it there. Anyway, the school can't make things difficult for you, a sick person. Go 11 was the one who spoke all the time, but Lu Ziyi remained uncharacteristically silent. Tang Wan noticed that his eyes were always on her neck. Thinking that her wound was bleeding again, she subconsciously reached out and wanted to touch it. Suddenly, Lu Ziyi spoke. Tang, can you take me with you next time? Thanks to the two treasures Yi Sun Wu Xiao and Qing Ran for their rewards, I'm so generous. Thank you to book friends 20240302020449080, Shitu 620, Lianyu, 00110244, and 20221120 Mina for their monthly votes. I love you so much. Also, it's almost April. I'd like to make reservations for next month's monthly tickets to all of you. Hey. There should be no one earlier than me. That badge takes 10-15 days to be ready. Okay, it's another long wait, I can't laugh. Kk. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 176. Chapter 176. Are you using me? Fu Wenzi heard Lu Ziyi's question and looked at Lu Ziyi with some surprise. How should I put it? It felt like Lu Ziyi suddenly had a brain. Normally Lu Ziwen is not so smart, let alone discovering the core of the problem in the first place. Now I actually know how to strike preemptively. As expected, Fu Wenzi even saw a blank look on Tang Wan's face. A little silly, but also a little cute. In fact, Fu Wenzi was a little strange about his own state. After all, he rarely showed his emotions. After a while, two more people came in from the door. They are the two children of the Chen family, Chen Chuo and his brother Chen Hexiao. Chen Hexiao still looks like he is not easy to get along with. There is still a vague smell of cigarette smoke on his body, which makes him feel a little bored and in a bad mood. Unlike others, Chen Hexiao did not come to Tang Wan's side. He just stood at the door with his back to the light, looking a little indifferent. The look was a little different from the first time Tang Wan saw him. For some reason, Tang Wan felt a long-lost ill intention in him. The hairs on his body stood up, and all of Tang Wan's thoughts were instantly occupied. Tang Wan didn't seem to care about Fu Wenzi's abnormality and Lu Ziyi's questions at this moment, and only Chen Hexiao's appearance was in front of him. Different from these children, Chen Hexiao is almost an adult and is tall enough to almost block the entire door and block all light. But when he walked in from the door, he had that cynical expression on his face again, as if the oppressive feeling he had just given to Tang Wan was just Tang Wan's illusion. He stretched out his hands to rest on the edge of the hospital bed, and slowly moved closer to Tang Wan, looking frivolous and romantic. Tang Wan had a vague feeling that Chen Hexiao's nature was probably not so romantic. It's just his eyes that are so passionate by nature. He is the kind of person who looks at dogs affectionately. However, the first sentence he spoke was, "Why did the kid get himself into such a mess? Tisk, 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 you look so pitiful." Tang Wan pursed his lower lip, suppressed the strange feeling in his heart, picked up his tablet from the side, and prepared to answer his somewhat sarcastic words. However, someone moved faster than her. Go 11, who will always stand by Tang Wan, said angrily, "Are you here to visit someone? If not, please turn around and leave. You say Go 11 is rude, she will also say please. But you want to say that she is polite, but she is also issuing an eviction order." Chen Hexiao's eyes did not change when he heard this. He looked at Go 11 as if he was nothing, and he was particularly arrogant. Chen Hexiao is indeed such a person. Because he was older than the children present, he easily controlled the sovereignty of this small ward. However, Tang Wan raised his head and looked at Chen Hexiao with disapproval. He slowly raised his hand and picked up the tablet. It says, "No need to worry about it, thank you for your visit, I'm fine. If nothing happens, please leave. After all, from a certain perspective, you are also an uninvited guest." Tang Wan should be gentle overall, she rarely has such sharp feelings. Only when she treats her friends and the people she cares about, she will erect the sharp thorns on her body like a hedgehog. Those thorns can cause wounds all over the body of someone with bad intentions. It hurts beyond belief. Chen Hexiao narrowed his eyes slightly and spread his hands to indicate that he was harmless. He shrugged and turned sideways to let Chen Chuo behind him come out. He was still saying casually, "I am just here with my dear brother and have no intention of joining you." After saying this, Chen Hexiao turned around and left the ward. "It seems that we are really just here to watch the fun." Just before leaving, he reached out and patted Chen Chuo on the shoulder, and said, "Since some people don't welcome me, then I won't stay here to bore people. I'll wait for you outside." Chen Chuo nodded silently, indicating that he understood. After Chen Hexiao left the ward, the uncomfortable feeling faded away. The lingering smell of tobacco in the ward also dissipated into the air as Chen Hexiao left. The smell of disinfectant was entwined with the smell of tobacco, which seemed a bit deep in the room. Chen Chuo realized that the friends in the ward were not in a good mood. It is true that their relationship is better than that of ordinary classmates, but it is definitely not good enough to allow his brother to provoke them. Chen Chuo encountered this situation for the first time, and he was a little upset. There was a feeling of being taken advantage of by his brother, which made him very uncomfortable. When Chen Chuo thought of this, his face, which had never been very good looking, turned a little dark. But he still remembered that he was here to visit the patient, not to lose his temper, so he just took a deep breath, put the condolence gift he had prepared on Tang Wan's bedside, and then spoke. "I'm sorry that he suddenly wanted to come with me. I thought he was coming to the hospital to see his friend. Chen Shuo has always had a sharp tongue and rarely says anything like this that sounds like a sign of weakness. Tang Wan nodded, not taking Chen Hexiao's words to heart, but inevitably felt some sympathy for Chen Shuo. Having such a brother, life must not be easy, right? After all, Chen Hexiao is a very powerful person at first glance. Generally, you will not let others disobey you. Chen Shuo is also a very independent person. Do they really not know how to fight? Tang Wan had this thought in his mind. Looking at Chen Shuo's back as he left in a hurry, he had no other thoughts. After emotional ups and downs, people will become tired. Everyone saw that Tang Wan was a little sleepy, so they found a place to sit down. It seemed that they had made up their minds to accompany Tang Wan here. What happened this time scared everyone. I heard from the elders in the family that the Si family has not come back from the prison yet. It seems that they are discussing something with the prison guards inside. In short, they will not make it easy for the traffickers. The ward quickly became quiet, with only Fu Wenzi looking at the computer in front of him in trance. He couldn't stop Tang Wan, and he didn't want to restrict Tang Wan. Probably all he could do was, like Lu Ziyi, say that he wanted to be with Tang Wan. Only in this way can we feel at ease. As soon as Chen Shuo walked out of the ward, he saw his troublesome brother standing in the corridor with an unlit cigarette in his mouth. His eyelids were slightly drooped, looking like a dormant beast, a bit fierce. Chen Shuo looked at the tattoos on his neck, feeling a little strange. When did Chen Hexiao get a tattoo on his collarbone? However, Chen Shuo has never liked to meddle in other people's business. Even if that person is his brother, he is not willing to pay attention to it. Just very dissatisfied with Chen Hexiao's performance this time. You're using me. Chen Shuo's eyes were a little cold, and his thin lips looked inhumane. It's really bad. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 177. Chapter 177 is simply wishful thinking. Hearing this, Chen Hexiao took a strong bite of his cigarette holder and looked a little angry. However, he looked at his 10-year-old brother and sneered coldly. The tone was lazy, with some imperceptible pity. If one day, you are asked to make a choice between mother and friendship, will you talk to me like this? Chen Shuo was slightly startled. He subconsciously wanted to grab Chen Hexiao's hand and want him to speak clearly. Isn't my mother undergoing treatment abroad? Why did you suddenly mention her? Chen Hexiao glanced at Chen Shuo, who was a little flustered, and stretched out his hand to pry Chen Shuo's fingers apart. One after another, slowly and extremely powerfully. Because of this action, Chen Hexiao's body unconsciously moved closer to Chen Shuo, and naturally he did not miss the obvious smell of tobacco on his body. Chen Shuo, grow up quickly. Chen Shuo felt something strange in his heart when he heard Chen Hexiao suddenly say such a sentence. Before he had time to speak, he heard Chen Hexiao say again, there is not much time left for you. Chen Hexiao looked at Chen Shuo's blank eyes, and through these eyes, he seemed to see his former self. But his tone did not soften, it was still full of mockery. It was unclear whether he was mocking Chen Shuo's naivete or mocking himself. You only have one childhood, why don't you have a good time? After all, you have to leave here, right? Chen Shuo's fingers curled up slightly. He turned his head and looked behind him. There was Tang Wan's ward. He seemed to be able to see Tang Wan inside through the door. Just looked away in a daze, and replied in a hoarse voice, yes, I know. Then followed Chen Hexiao and left here. Tang Wan asked for leave for 3 days. During these 3 days, Tang Wan was busier than usual. She met a lot of people. The people inside who looked as angry as Lu Lin were Si Hui and Grandma Si. But compared to Lu Lin, their faces showed more pain. Probably because my mother had done something like this before me, so I was already prepared. It's just emotionally unacceptable. Proud at the same time, but also distressed at the same time. It is the conflicting feeling that pulls them, making them feel very bad. Tangwan can only post stickers one by one, hoping to reassure them in this way. But it's somewhat useless. They are still worried and still unhappy. Tangwan had no choice but to do nothing during this period and keep moving under their noses, hoping that this would give them a sense of security. Yes. Sense of security. Tangwan never imagined that Lulin and Sci-fi would be so uneasy. They were afraid that they would die, so they stayed with them. The school also heard about this and asked the class to send a representative to the hospital to visit Tangwan. Tangwan was a little surprised by the person who came. He was not the squad leader, but his desk mate, Ji Helen. The expression on his face was stinky and he looked unhappy. Hand held a box of exquisite fresh-keeping boxes. Inside was a medicinal meal prepared by someone unknown. When it was delivered, it was still steaming. But there are too many medicated foods in Tangwan. Fu Wenzi has been ordering medicinal meals for Tangwan from the first day, and even went to the kitchen to watch and learn to cook them for Tangwan. As for the fruits, Lu Ziyi and Go 11 peeled them for Tangwan, cut them into little rabbit shapes, and placed them next to Tangwan for her to eat. As for the flowers, I can't even put them down. Even gave away a lot of them. So when Ji Helen saw that he had no place to intervene, the corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. Okay, it seems that there is really no need for myself. But Ji Helen made up his mind to stay in Tangwan for a while, so he followed Lu Ziyi's example and peeled apples for Tangwan. It's just that his craftsmanship was so poor that there was only an apple core left in the peeled apple. Of course I am embarrassed to show it to Tangwan. He looked around and found that no one was paying attention to him, so he quickly threw away the apple core in his hand. Destroy evidence. As soon as he raised his head, he met Tangwan's eyes. He twitched the corners of his mouth and made a stiff smile, his cheeks a little red. Then he scratched the back of his head, trying hard to change the topic and cover up his clumsiness. Tang, did you know that Senior Chen Chuo transferred to another school? Tangwan? Tangwan didn't react for a moment. Didn't Chen Chuo come to the hospital to see me yesterday? Why did you suddenly transfer to another school? This news was so surprising to her that even Ji Helen's call to herself Tang was ignored. How come you haven't received any news at all? Aren't they friends? Fu Wenzi on the side put the strawberry that Tangwan didn't like into his mouth, and then added, this matter has been decided a long time ago. The children of the Chen family will only live in China until they are 10 years old, and then they will go abroad for training. They will not come back until they are qualified. Lu Ziyi on the side also nodded, Chen Hexiao just came back before. So I haven't seen him before. Tangwan opened his watch and frowned slightly when he saw that the information in Chen Chuo's column had gone dark. How come you didn't even send a message? Lu Ziyi saw that Tangwan was a little confused and continued to explain, they are afraid of accidents, so they don't say anything. They usually only find out after they have gone abroad. Don't forget that Chen Chuo's father is just a lawyer. In fact, he rarely returns to China. You may say you are a lawyer, but you are actually acting internationally. I returned to China this time just to relax and promote the Chen Group on a variety show. Tangwan nodded, indicating that he understood, but felt a little strange. Perhaps it's because Chen Chuo is not the kind of person who leaves without saying goodbye. She always felt that it was not that simple. But what Lu Ziyi said was so commonplace that Tangwan felt that his intuition was wrong. But Tangwan's intuition is never wrong. But now, everyone is with him in the ward. Tangwan did not say these unpleasant words, but just suppressed his uneasiness. Fu Wenzi on the side calmly took in Tangwan's expression, and the information on his watch kept beating. He picked up the watch covertly, looked at the information on it and raised his eyebrows. If he's that little Chen Hexiao's arms are stretched too far, and he dared to challenge Sci-fi's robot even before he was an adult. Fu Wenzi ignored the nicknames Pei Yunzhou gave those people and only selected information that was beneficial to him. Ification, he got stuck at this point. It was great, it happened to be the time for handover. Fu Wenzi pressed down his watch, blocking out all the light on it. Like Tang Wan, he did not have a good impression of Chen Hexiao. But it's not for any deep reason. I simply felt that his eyes and actions were too frivolous. Just making yourself unhappy. Fu Wenzi licked the tip of Huy's teeth with his tongue, and the strawberry taste on his tongue lingered in his mouth for a long time. Suddenly, Tang Wan, who had been listening to Lu Ziyi's words, turned his head and met his gaze before he could take it back. Fu Wenzi slowly raised the corners of his lips, with a harmless look on his face again. Tut. Just a barely qualified jackal. Also want to have a place in the orchard? It's simply wishful thinking. Thanks to Jin Ziwan Zz and Zwerkong, you two treasures are generous in giving rewards. Thanks to book friends 202210120905030049, Nice, Java, Lanren Linlang, Share 125, Tong Tong Girl, book friends 202209121431326661, and the monthly votes of the 7 treasures, Moja. I finally finished writing before 10 o'clock. IVE kept everyone waiting for a long time. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 178. Chapter 178. My unique little painter. Beautiful things will always be coveted by wolves, tigers, and leopards. Even Fu Wenzi himself is one of them. He knows better than anyone how tempting a soul like Tang Wan is to selfish and evil people like them. He is the kind of person who will rush to Tang Wan without hesitation no matter how many times he has the opportunity to choose. She is always her only choice. Like a murderer lurking in the darkness, he also feels the light of the deserted moon. Tang Wan turned around and caught Fu Wenzi's gaze. To this day, she is actually familiar with the feeling of finding Fu Wenzi's gaze whenever she turns around. As long as Fu Wenzi is around, I will always notice his sight. From the beginning, I felt uncomfortable, but now I have become somewhat accustomed to it. Tang Wan was stunned for a moment when he saw Fu Wenzi, as if he was a little surprised, and then slowly smiled. Looks a bit like your own shadow. The look of never leaving. But Tang Wan also knows that the so-called is always a lie. She is not very old, but has experienced too many things, so the word seems is added to everything, leaving room for success. It seems that only in this way, I will not feel sad because of failed expectations. Finally, Tang Wan was discharged from the hospital. In fact, for those who care about Tang Wan, what they are more worried about is Tang Wan's psychological injury. We have known each other for more than half a year, and basically everyone knows that Tang Wan cannot speak because she has a taboo in her heart. A very serious psychological suggestion that made her unable to speak. So everyone is trying their best to get Tang Wan to speak, but with little effect. At this moment, Sci-fi suddenly spoke, I don't think so. I heard her call her mother last time. Lulin? Lulin subconsciously turned to look at Sci-fi, with some strange emotions in his eyes. But soon Sci-fi shook his head again, but it was only that one time, and she only shouted this word. Lulin lowered his head, stretched out his hand, subconsciously touched his chin, pondered for a moment, and suddenly said, perhaps Tang Tang's refusal to speak has something to do with her mother. Sci-fi disagreed a little. To be honest, he couldn't accept Lulin talking about his lover in such a speculative tone. But how their lover died and why Tang Wan couldn't speak are questions they have no answers to. Reason told Sci-fi that what Lulin said was probably correct, but his emotions were subconsciously escaping him. It seemed that this way, he would not have to face the fact that his home was broken. Sci-fi stretched out his hand and pressed the root of his mountain, suppressing the negative emotions in his heart, and then said, "If I guess based on what you said, there is only one possibility." At this point, Sci-fi paused, and his expressionless face took on a gloomy look, that is, Tang Tang faced Nana's death head-on. The atmosphere in the room was a bit condensed, no one spoke, and only air seemed to be flowing between them. This speculation is really hard to accept. How old was Tang Tang at that time? It seems that he has just turned 3 years old. If you really face the death of your mother, and your mother tells you not to speak, you should hide it. Then it all makes sense. But is this a little too cruel? Isn't it a little too? Sinz immediately covered his mouth and swallowed the sobs in his mouth. Her eyes instantly turned red, and the cold expression on her face suddenly changed. The sentimental Grandma Lu had long since burst into tears. She knew that Tang Tang had a hard time in the orphanage, knew that she was a good child, and knew that even though she suffered a lot of torture, she was still a very good child. She was already very distressed. However, it is too devastating to face the death of a loved one who is accompanying you. Even an adult cannot bear the pain. How can she, a little kid, bear it? Grandma Lu suddenly fell into Grandpa Lu's arms, crying so hard that she was out of breath. Why can't good people live a long life? Obviously the people in the Shui family are very good people. They have clearly sacrificed everything for the motherland, for the peace of the mountains and seas, and for the hard-won peace, but why have they become cold monuments? Grandma Lu couldn't figure it out. No one can figure it out. Everyone present is an adult, children cannot listen to this. What they didn't expect was that Pei Yunzhou had a listening earphone in his ear, and Fu Wenzi could hear the conversation. Fu Wenzi listened to their voices, looked at the information on the computer, and tapped his fingers on the table unconsciously. Have you seen your mother die with your own eyes? Fu Wenzi's mind flashed with Tang Wan's appearance, and he tried to draw a complete picture of Tang Wan in his mind based on the news. It's not her appearance, nor her daily habits, something so superficial. Being pretty is just her most insignificant advantage. Finally, when the sound there completely disappeared, Fu Wenzi turned off the device. Fu Wenzi knew it. Suffering does not create beautiful flowers. Tang Wan's good fortune is not caused by these hardships. She does not need to bloom from suffering, she is the best flower. Fu Wenzi tidied the table, packed his school bag, and walked out of the house as usual to get ready for school. Just when I was passing by Lu's house, I saw Tang Wan coming out of the house. In his sight, Tang Wan was probably the only one with color. The black and white colors were colored by Tang Wan's arrival. Then he met Tang Wan's eyes, which was the beginning of the day. Fu Wenzi still had the taste of mint in his mouth. He put the tip of his tongue against the roof of his mouth and added silently in his mind. Good morning. My unique, little painter. Most of the students in Class 1A are used to Tang Wan suddenly asking for leave. I always feel that Tang Wan's campus life is different from everyone else's, and her life is more colorful. Even Ji Helen would be amazed. Tang Wan has always been quiet. The classmates around him were extremely curious about Tang Wan, but Tang Wan was too quiet to respond. They just looked at Tang Wan cautiously, with what they thought was a hidden side, observing how unique Tang Wan was. At this moment, several senior students suddenly came outside the door. When they saw Tang Wan in the classroom, their eyes lit up and they walked in quickly. Tang Wan was working on the test papers that he had left over the past few days. Before he could finish writing, he felt that the light in front of him was blocked. She raised her head subconsciously and saw the 6th grade senior in front of her, with her hands on the table, and her eyes were illuminated by the bright colors of the sun, like amber, shining and sincere. His voice is a little loud, like a husky who is always full of energy. Tangwan, are you interested in joining the student union of the primary school? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 179. Chapter 179. Fans of the system. The 6th grade senior in front of me has his name and class on the school badge on his chest. And a small student union position below. Name, Seong Sizu. Class, grade 6, A. Position, Student Council President of Primary School. For most students, there are only 2 lines of introduction. And the school badge with a black background. Only those who have joined the student union, or are the president or deputy president of a club will have a 3rd line of logo. Moreover, in addition, the color of the school badge is also related to grades. For students in the top 10 grades, the background color of the school badge is black. For students in the East Campus except for the top 10 students, the background color of the school badge is dark blue. For students outside the top 10 in the West Campus, the background color of the school badge is light blue. Tangwan doesn't know if other schools have such rules and regulations, but in her opinion, this school really has survival of the fittest engraved in its bones. The better the children, the more resources they will receive. Everyone has to work hard to climb up. If he doesn't work hard, he will fall into mediocrity and be lost to everyone else. The school differentiates between all outstanding and ordinary children, strengthening cutting-edge education, and even in extremely outstanding cases, students' rights will be greater than those of ordinary teachers. So even though Ji Helen behaves erratically, he is among the top 10 in the 1st grade, so the school's attitude towards him is mostly tolerant as long as he does not break the law. The same is true for Tangwan, Chenchuo, Fu Wenzi, and Lu Ziyi. Tangwan cannot speak, and Seong Sizu has already understood this. But he didn't care. That spring flower party, even if Tangwan didn't say a word, didn't it still make it lively and colorful? The Pei Group's tents are now in short supply. Folk culture at Jingjiao University has also gained a little popularity, and university professors have also followed Tangwan's example and opened a live broadcast room. Of course not to bring goods, just to take classes. However, Grandma Li is humorous and maintains the momentum of Tangwan Zhao. Seong Sizu thinks that the students in this school may have enjoyed so many good things since birth that they have neglected that the only things that make money are food, clothing, housing, and transportation. And being able to discover these little things and integrate them, isn't this a kind of excellence? Not to mention that Tangwan's reputation is higher than that of other classmates, and he is a good candidate for the propaganda department. Before seeing Tangwan noodles, Seong Sizu had always thought this way. Until he saw Tangwan's eyes. He thinks that compared to the propaganda department, maybe the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is also suitable for Tangwan? She has a convincing temperament and an affinity that no one else has, and people can't help but believe in her. Seong Sizu's mind was spinning rapidly and he thought of several ways to get Tangwan to join the student union. However, Tangwan raised the white paper in his hand and wrote on it. "Thank you, but I don't have time." Tangwan did not tell lies, nor did he shirk. But really busy. This school is very good in every aspect. People's energy is limited. Even if Tangwan has a photographic memory, there are still many things that require practice to make perfect. For example, the assessment of the martial arts club. Tangwan felt a little melancholy when he thought of this. Her body is extremely weak compared to other members of the club. For others, if someone is thrown from their back, they may be able to get up from the mat with just a slight pain. But Tangwan is different. If she is thrown from her back, she will definitely turn green. If you don't pay attention to protecting yourself, you may even break a bone. In this regard, the president of the martial arts club comes to teach Tangwan in person every time. No one can control strength better than her. Tangwan shook his head, his thoughts drifting away. Although Xiang Sizi thought that Tangwan would refuse, he didn't expect that Tangwan would refuse so simply, without even making up a decent reason. Before he said anything, the student union members around him were a little dissatisfied. No matter how busy you are, how busy can you be as busy as the president? Joining the student union has a much better future than your martial arts club, don't be ignorant. Tangwan's ears twitched, but he didn't take the senior sister's words to heart. After strengthening the class, supporters will inevitably emerge. Obviously, this senior is a supporter of the student union. Tangwan does not agree with such a system. She didn't want to be a part of it. The smile on Xiang Sizi's face was still bright and open. He didn't seem to take Tangwan's words to heart. Instead, he said with a smile to the members around him, "Don't say that, the schoolgirl may not mean it either. After all, the school's curriculum is still a bit tight, and not everyone can easily become the top 10. His words sounded like he was trying to save Tangwan, but if you think about it carefully, weren't they saying that Tangwan wasn't smart enough, so he needed to spend a lot of time studying to ensure that he was among the top 10 excellent students? Tangwan is such a transparent person, so naturally he understood his words of praise and criticism. She did not make any other moves, and did not even look at the students in front of her. Treat them like air. The senior wanted to say something else, but suddenly, an angry voice sounded. Class is about to begin, why are you still here, it's making so much noise. Ji Helen. His angelic face was obviously manic, looking like an angry lion cub. The expression on Xiang Sizi's face did not change. He just pulled the members around him to leave. Before leaving, he did not forget to say to Tangwan, "Classmate Tangwan, I hope you can think about it carefully. After all, there are some resources that only the student union can provide." Tangwan acted as if he didn't hear anything, took out the textbook for the next class, and sat upright. Just under the cover of the textbook, Tangwan put a handful of nut chocolate into Ji Helen's drawer. Ji Helen did not miss Tangwan's movements and looked up at Tangwan in surprise. In his memory, Tangwan had never looked so good on him. Tangwan opened her mouth and said thank you using lip language. "Then start the class seriously." Ji Helen muttered in a low voice, I'm not standing up for you, it's just that she is too noisy." The tips of the ears hidden under the chestnut hair quietly turned red. He stretched out his hand and plucked the chocolates in the drawer. The day's courses are full. Even though the school is a happy education, it requires much more practical things than other schools. By the time Tangwan got out of school, it was already 7 o'clock in the evening. She packed up the things on the table and prepared to go home with her tablet on her back. The street lights of the school turned on, and under the warm lights, the usually ordinary campus became eerily quiet. At this moment, the sound of crying came from the garden in the center of the teaching building. "Sounds very scary." Tangwan pinched her shoulder, straightened the corners of her lips, and stopped in place. She heard a slightly familiar voice and raised her eyebrows. I don't have any anymore, really don't have any more. Thanks to Yao. Shu. Princess Mo, Li Yulawin, sh Bookworm, h. E. Wenjun where to rely on Fangfei, Ishiao, 8 treasures for their monthly votes, I love you so much. Furthermore, isn't it the 31st? The monthly tickets for next month are great. What a shame. The little mute's life was stolen, and the wealthy boss comes to spoil him. Author, do you want to eat rabbit head? Chapter 180. Chapter 180 You'd better be honest. Tangwan subconsciously wanted to walk over by herself, but when she was picking up the lush flowers, Lu Lin's expression in the ward suddenly appeared in her mind. She slowly lowered her arm, then opened the child's watch and took out the tablet in her backpack to use as a weapon. Then he covered himself and walked in. Tang Wan has always known that a person's character and education level have little to do with the money and power he possesses. Human character is determined by the environment. If man's most basic nature is a blank sheet of paper, then the living environment is the color of the environment, which is the easiest to pollute the true nature. Lingyun Academy is an exquisite cage. It looks glamorous and too beautiful to be true. In fact, the rules here feel like wild beasts fighting for each other. Everyone is striving to become a stronger superior. It is an overly cruel survival of the fittest, which makes young children know the cruelty of this world prematurely. For this reason, some other things will also be spawned. For example, oppression. The suppressed emotions need a breakthrough. If there is no relief at home and in daily life, then the only way to get emotional value is from weaker people. Tang Wan certainly believes that not all children are born evil. But in extreme circumstances, anyone has the possibility of becoming evil. With this thought in mind, Tang Wan did not appear immediately. Instead, he stood in the shadow and looked at the classmates inside. Fortunately, they are all acquaintances. The expression on Xiang Sizu's face was no longer as sunny as in the classroom during the day. He squatted by the flower bed, his eyelids slightly lowered, and his overly long eyelashes formed a shadow on his face. Looking particularly gloomy. He was accompanied by two senior classmates, wearing red armbands with the words Discipline Committee on their arms. The girl standing in front of them crying looked like a fourth-grade senior. Wearing a pair of large black-rimmed glasses, he is thin and looks like a panicked rabbit. She pursed her lips and said in a crying voice, I have no money. I didn't do well in the exam this time. Home, no, give me more, how much? In this school, grades are everything. If your grades are not good, your parents may reduce your living expenses and pocket money. Tang Wan felt that the senior sister didn't look like someone who didn't study hard. She might just be bad at studying. However, Xiang Sizu stood up, his tone was a little lazy and his voice was a little low. What does that have to do with me? You're such a stupid person, you're extremely lucky to have me tutor you, how can you still default on your debt? Tang Wan doesn't think Xiang Sizu is short of money. Probably just looking for an excuse to vent my emotions. But not everyone can think of this, especially the girl who was frightened. She only dared to reply tremblingly, but, it's not me. I want you to help me with tutoring. Upon hearing this, Xiang Sizu smiled, then grabbed the senior sister's braid, pulled her in front of him, and said, What? Do you still think I'm troublesome? How can a fourth-grade girl be the opponent of a sixth-grader, especially Xiang Sizu, who has been training since childhood and is much stronger than the average child? The girl screamed in pain, but was kicked by the person next to Xiang Sizu. What are you shouting for? Do you want to call the teacher over? But it's useless even if you call the teacher over. After all, a student like you who can only take the exam for more than 200 people will not have a teacher to help you. You are so pathetic, no one can help you. Indeed, people like you shouldn't come to study here. Your father is also a businessman who just came to Jingqiao. He is just a nouveau riche in farming. Do you really think that coming here can change the fact that you have no background? Tisk, ugly. The more they talk, the more they go too far, but the person talking is not necessarily the senior sister in front of them. Just vent out the dissatisfaction in your heart. Tang Wan looked at the tears on her senior sister's face and pressed the watch in her hand. The content of what they had just said came out, interrupting their movements. Xiang Sizu heard his own voice and turned his head instantly. He saw Tang Wan hiding in the dark and squinted his eyes. He said, Is it you? He knew that Tang Wan couldn't speak, so he continued to speak without waiting for Tang Wan's answer, I advise you not to mind your own business. It's best to delete the recording, so that I don't let you walk around without food. Tang Wan shook his head. Her watch is connected to Lu Lin's mobile phone, which means that if Xiang Sizu wants to take revenge on herself, Lu Lin will know about it. This is the consequence of Tang Wan's last private action. It is also a kind of protection. Xiang Sizu looked at Tang Wan's helpless appearance, walked slowly in front of Tang Wan, and looked at Tang Wan condescendingly, with a bit of pity in his tone. You'd better not skip the toast and eat as a penalty. But the next second. Excuse me, senior, who wants to drink wine as a penalty for not eating the toast? Tang Wan heard the familiar, youthful, and desolate voice. She turned her head subconsciously and saw Fu Wenzi coming with the moonlight. The expression on his face was so gentle, as if he had not seen such a dangerous and strange scene in front of him. Then he walked to Tang Wan and stood in front of Tang Wan. Xiang Sizu looked at the little cub in front of him and was slightly impressed by him. It is a child brought by the Pei family. They are also people who have close to perfect scores in the entrance test. She is not someone who can be bullied like that other fourth-grade girl. Thinking of this, he withdrew his gaze and chuckled, looking the same as during the day. It's just that the background color is gloomy black. I think there may be some misunderstanding. Misunderstanding, Fu Wenzi pondered the last two words in his mouth, then stretched out his hand to grab the necklace around Xiang Sizu's neck, and then pulled Xiang Sizu's head down with a strong tug. The senior is the student council president, why is he blatantly violating school rules? His voice was still so careless. If the expression on Xiang Sizu's face hadn't been a little distorted, it would be hard to tell how much force Fu Wenzi had used. This was the first time Tang Wan saw Fu Wenzi take action. In the past, Fu Wenzi stood silently among the crowd, hiding himself, and would not do such an obviously provocative thing. As the president of the elementary school and also the student representative, you should take the lead, senior. He shouted the word senior in his mouth, but his eyes were looking down at Xiang Sizu, who was dragged to the ground by him. Those eyes are clearly saying something. You better be honest, or I will twist your head off.